I'm so glad that you're worshiping with us this morning, wherever it is that you're worshiping from. And want to let you know that the message that I'm preaching this morning, there is an outline that's available to you. If you go to our website, you can download the outline there and follow along with that. There's some blanks if you that helps you to connect and to remember the things that are being said. And also, there's a link that will connect you to a welcome card. If you're new to the Journey family and you're not connected to us, we would love to know you. I would love to personally welcome you to the Journey. So if you fill out that welcome card, give us an email address, and I'll contact you this week. And I just want you to know that we want you to know that this isn't just an online experience. This is about being a part of the family of faith, and we want you to experience that and to know that. I want to begin this morning with a question for you. Have you ever been lost? I want you to think about a time in your life where you've experienced what it is to be lost. And when you think of a time or place, why don't you just go ahead and connect with us this morning by filling it in the Facebook line there. Let us know where you were lost, how you were lost, when you were lost. You don't have to, tell us the whole story. Just something that says, hey, I've been lost. I know what that feels like. I've been there. I've done that. Maybe you even bought the t-shirt. Have you ever been lost? A few years ago, despite the objections of many people that I know and love, I decided to do a 3-day solo hike. And the reality is it wasn't really 3 days. It was 3 days and 2 nights. It really amounted to just maybe right around 48 hours. But that proved to be ample time for me to get into a whole lot of trouble. And so on this trip, I'm hiking by myself out in the middle of the wilderness. And I came to a point where I was moving from one region to another, and I had to change maps. And the maps that I went from and to had different scales. And I was coming to a place where I'm kind of coming down the side of the mountain, and it looks like everything's opening up in front of me. And it was obvious that this way is the way to go. And at that very moment, I'm kind of looking at the map and saying, yep, that makes sense. And I start going down this path, but I lost the trail. But as I'm walking down, I could see the trail that I wanted to end up down below me. And I looked at my map again, and I'm off the trail, but I'm thinking if I just keep going this way, the passage narrows, I'm going to come back to where I need to be. But the farther I go down the mountain, the steeper it gets, and then I start getting into some sagebrush, and that's getting thicker and thicker. And I keep thinking, I'm going to come back to the trail. I have to come back to the trail, but I'm not coming back to the trail until I point to it. I'm kind of wading through the sagebrush, and the next step is like a 40-foot drop. I'm like, I'm in trouble. And I pull out my maps again, and I start looking. I'm trying to figure out where it is that I'm at and where it is that I'm supposed to be. And I can't see a way forward. And the only way is to carry my pack back up this mountain that I've just been sliding down. To be lost. There are lots of different kinds of lost. It can be lost like we were at Disneyland one time. We lost our daughter, Kaylee. She was the oldest, but still pretty young. And in that case, she knew she was lost, but we didn't even know she was lost until the Disneyland person come up and said, hey, is this your daughter? Oh, yeah, that is. We lost her. You can be lost on the side of a mountain like I was and not even at that point in time know that I was lost. You can be lost on the top of a mountain. I've had this experience too, where I knew exactly where I was. I could look at my map and say, yep, there I am right there. But lost in the sense that I had no idea how to get off of the top of the mountain. Couldn't find any of the trails down. Lost in the Grand Canyon one time. My whole family hiked down into the canyon. We're going to this place called Mesa Table, something like that, Horseshoe Mesa. And we get down there, and we get to the saddle, and it's a long hike down, and we had a long hike out. And I thought, you know what? I want to make it actually to the mesa off the saddle. So I kind of let the family back, and they know the first part of it, that I ran up and I went ahead to get to the top of the mesa, and I got there. And when I came back, somehow I got on the wrong side of a ridge, and suddenly I couldn't find my family. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I was here, I was there, but at that point in time, and in the canyon, it's just like every place I looked the same. And it was very disorienting. So here I am, like lost from the people that I'm supposed to be with, lost in the canyon, that disorientation, maybe kind of the worst kind of scary lostness. The experience in the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant in the helicopter crash last spring, right? Flying in the fog. And in that context, not knowing which way is up or down, being lost. In his case, losing his life, the life of his daughter, the life of the other people in that helicopter, maybe the hardest, most difficult, painful kind of loss, losing the people that we loved. We can lose a job, we can lose our keys, we can lose heart, we can lose perspective, we can lose hope, we can lose our minds. There are lots of ways to be lost. We're talking about our stories. What's your story? What's your story? And last week, we looked at kind of the big picture of our lives and what it is that our lives are meant to be about and what our place in the world is. And I made this case that from Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4, Paul says, long before God laid the foundations, the earth's foundations, he had us in mind. He actually thought of us before he created us, had settled on us as the focus of his love to be made whole and holy by his love. That God meant something when he made us, something unique. Genesis chapter 1, we looked at it, said that we were created in the image and likeness of God. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And Psalm 8, verse 5 says that in his creation, us uniquely, that he crowned us with glory and honor, that being made in his image, that somehow we uniquely reflect God's glory to the world. That our lives, I made the case last week, that our lives are meant to reveal God's glory to the world. That our lives, as Paul says, are a letter from Christ. And I tried to make the case to each of you last week that that's actually true of you. That your life, that you were created in the image and likeness of God, crowned with glory and honor, to reveal his glory to the world. But even in suggesting that, there's something I think in myself and I think in most of us that realizes, even if we believe that that's true, that something has gone awry. That if that's the case, that if we were made in the glory and honor to bear the image and likeness of God, that our lives are meant to reveal his glory, that something about what was meant to be isn't what's happening in our lives. Think about it. How do you respond when you hear me say that? How did you respond maybe last week as you were hearing me say that? Did you think, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Tim. I know what my glory is. I walk and live in that every day. Is that what you thought? Or did you think, you know what, Tim, I know that you were in Indiana last week, a couple weeks ago, and I know that there's a lot of cows there. There are a lot of cows there. And maybe you've breathed a little bit too much manure and like something's gone to your head and like really you think that's true about me? If I asked you today to tell me, how is it that the glory of God is being revealed through your life today? How is it that you're crowned with his glory and honor? How's your shine? How would you respond to that? Would you say something like, you know what? I'm trying to do the best that I can. I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying to be the best version of myself. Or might you say something like, well, you know, I'm trying, but nobody's perfect, and I'm not perfect, but, you know, I'm doing the best I can, and I think I'm doing it better than maybe a lot of other people are. Or maybe you might say something like, you know what, I haven't killed anybody. At least I haven't done that. Or maybe you can say something, maybe you can't say that, but I haven't killed anybody who didn't deserve it. How would you respond? See, all of those responses are different than what Paul says and calls us to when he says that we're called to shine like stars in the universe. Are you shining like a star in the universe? One of my favorite life passages from Isaiah says that our righteousness is to shine like the dawn. Our salvation like a blazing torch. The kings would be blinded by our glory. It would be a splendid crown in the hands of God. Is that how you see your life? Is that how you see your place in the world? Crowned with glory and honor, shining like your righteousness, shining like the dawn? Before the foundations of the earth, he lovingly decided to make us whole and holy by his love. Now, holy, that word, isn't happy for a lot of us. A lot of times when we think about holy, we think about things like, and maybe in one case, like really, really like a strict version of religion. To be holy is to be very somber. It's the thou shalt not side of religion. For some of us, we think of holiness in that regard as just being excruciating boredom, right? The stuff of nuns and monks. Not really how we envision what we want for our lives to be. Or maybe we think of holier than thou. Right? People who think that they're holy and act all holy and act what we say holier than thou, which is sarcastic, saying kind of the worst form of pride, is spiritual pride, spiritual arrogance. But holy, in its truest form, holy, as it's used and expressed in the Bible, when God talks about being made, when we're made whole and holy by his love, is to be set apart for a sacred purpose. Set apart for a unique purpose. The opposite of holy, you think if you looked at a dictionary, you find words like the opposite of holy as being evil or profane, and those things they are the opposite of holy, but it's actually doesn't have to be that far down the line, right? The opposite of holy is taking anything that's set apart for a sacred purpose and using it for something other than that sacred purpose. The opposite of holy, it can be as simple as common. It was made to be special and is being used in a way that's common. It's like taking your grandma's china and using it for a school picnic with your kids' class. Or taking your wife's brand new shirt out of the bag and using it to dust off your trophy case. Or when we were kids growing up, we would like to play hide and seek in the sanctuary of our church, which we thought was a blast, but the elders of the church thought was a common use of sacred space, and they looked very poorly upon our activities in the sanctuary. It's taking a life that was created in the image and likeness of God, crowned with glory and honor, and using it for, anything else. Holy, set apart, to be made whole and holy by his love. What is it to be whole? It's to be one. It's to be integrated. The opposite is to be half-hearted, right? You ever do anything half-hearted? I can give you a great example. I learned last week, I was training for the Long Beach Marathon. I learned that the marathon is now going to be canceled, so I'm not going to be running the Long Beach Marathon in October, but I'm still training, I'm still running, but it's not the same, right? I'm out there running, I'm putting in my miles, but it's half-hearted. And it's excruciating, it's painful when you're doing something hard and half-hearted. or to be double-minded. It's that thing when it's like, well, part of me wants to, or part of me thinks I should, or I ought to. It's the division between I want and I ought or I should. It's that splitting apart of us. To be whole is to not have that, is to be of one mind, to be integrated, to be wholehearted, to be whole and holy. Just to give you maybe an example of what that might look like in a person's life. Is for a man who has been consumed by jealousy to wake up one morning and to not be jealous anymore, to not feel any of that insecurity or any of that anger or rage welling up inside, to be free of that forever. Or for a woman who is lost and buried in the ache of loneliness in such a way that she suffocates every new relationship, trying to fill that void in her heart. To have that need wiped away clean, to be whole inside so that she could then give herself to others in relationship and in love and in mercy rather than trying to consume to get something from. It's the chronic worrier. It's always thinking, did I say the wrong thing, or did I do the wrong thing? Or did she take it the wrong way? To never have to worry again is to be whole and holy. It's the addict being free of their addiction. Think about whatever it is that haunts you, whatever it is that plagues you. What would it be like to never struggle with that again? That is to be whole and to be holy. I'm going to ask you a question. If whole and holy is home, right? If that's where you are the fullness of all that God created you and meant you to be, if whole and holy is home, where are you today? Right? If you put it on a map and you said, I'm here, I'm at home, or this is home, this is whole and holy, where would you place yourself on the map? Would you be resting comfortably in the backyard, maybe sitting in the hammock with an umbrella drink right where you were meant to be? Or might you be realizing that you're lost on the trail and you didn't even know it? If whole and holy is home, where are you? Maybe farther down the road than that. Maybe lost in the fog or wandering in the deepest, darkest cave, not knowing where to go. This is not a rhetorical. I really want you to think about this. And if you downloaded the notes, or just grab a piece of paper, make a picture of home, and identify where you are on that map. Where are you relative to home? Jesus told a story about a young man who got lost. It's a familiar story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, the younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. But no one gave him anything. This man was lost on multiple levels. Right? He was lost in the sense that he thought he knew where he was in his life. Right? He thought that he had come to a place where he was ready to strike out and do life on his own. He was ready to leave home, ready to get on with adulting. And so he goes to his dad and says, Dad, it's time. I'm ready to go. Give me my inheritance. Let me go. He thought he knew where he was going to, right? He thought, I know where I'm at and I know where I'm going. And he took his money and he went to this place and he thought when he got to that place where he was going that he knew where he was and he knew what he wanted to do with it. That was home. That was my old life. That was then. This is now. This is life and I'm ready to live it. He thought it would be like that forever. Until the pandemic. Until the famine. And he was wrong on all counts. He was lost. He lost all his money. And with his money being gone, then he lost his next meal. He lost his dignity. Jesus is telling a parable here, right? But he's telling a parable to as a Jewish man talking to a Jewish audience, and in his parable, the son has fallen to a place so low that he is feeding the pigs, right? Unclean to eat, let alone to wallow him. And he can't even eat, doesn't even have to eat what the pigs are eating. He's lost his dignity. When he had money, he had friends. He was wild living. He was having a great time. Now that he doesn't have money, his friends are gone, and he's far from home, and his family's gone, so he can't even find anybody to give him something to eat. It says, no one gave him anything. He was lost in every way possible. And in the rubble of the lost, it says that he found something that brought him to his senses. That having lost everything, he found the one thing that he needed most. He found his senses. He came to his senses. And he said, all those farm hands working for my father sit down to 3 meals a day, and here I am starving to death. He's lost, but he's finally at least realized how lost he is. He's come to his senses. My family moved to Lakewood 22 years ago this summer. We left home. We didn't leave home like the son in the story of the parable that Jesus told, although there are people in my family who think we left home that way. We didn't. We came to California with a sense of call and convictions. We came here on mission. We came here to live out our glory and honor, our calling, our place and our purpose in the world. And because we were leaving our family behind, there was a sense of grief that associated that coming, that we left something that mattered a lot. And so painfully aware of what it cost for us to come, there was a sense of urgency to actually live out what it is that we came here to be and to do. There was a sense of urgency. Every summer, we travel back to the motherland to see our families. And our trip is always an annual reminder of what living so far from our families costs us. Right? It reminds us that being with family again reminds us of what we're missing out by living so far from home. And that annual reminder also leads to an annual assessment of whether I'm living out why it is that I'm here. Am I fulfilling that calling and glory that justifies that's like I left there to come and be and do and live out this? Am I actually doing it? At the end of our trip, there's always a sense of sadness and grief, because we're always saying goodbye to people that we love, and it's going to be a while before we see them again, and the kids are going to grow another foot from the last time we saw them, and life's going to change. There's always a sense of sadness. But I've recognized for me that there's also always a sense of grief too. Because the answer to that question of am I living out that glory is in some part no. That I've gotten distracted or discouraged or complacent or comfortable. And that the grief is in realizing that I'm bearing the cost but not living out the purpose. Now, it's far more complicated now, right? Because I've been living in California for 22 years. And this is our home. And the journey is our family. So it's not just, I realize if we picked up here and we moved back to Indiana now, that there'll be a whole set of grief on the other end, and I'd be on the other end asking the same questions. There is no home now. But it drives me back to this. That assessment of, am I living out my glory? Am I living on purpose? Am I fulfilling God's calling in my life? Brings me to my senses and points me back to the Father and saying, who am I and what am I doing, and am I living that out? Am I being and doing who it is you created me to be? See, I want you to go back to your metaphor. If whole and holy is home, where are you? Now, spoiler alert, when Jesus told this story, the purpose of the story was not to tell us that the young man got lost. It's about him getting found. But for some, the only way to get home is to realize that we're not there. The only way to get home is to come to that place where we realize that our life is not what it was meant to be, and we're not walking and living out that glory, and to come to our senses and to say, what? No. If we're not lost, we're not ready to be found. And so this is an incomplete message this morning. And it's that way on purpose. Because I hope this morning that if you've lost the trail, if you look at whole and holy and you're saying, I'm on the other side of the planet, that there will be an awakening, that there will be a coming to your senses that will lead you, that will prepare your heart for a homecoming like you have never known. The only way to get back home sometimes is to come to our senses and realize that that is not where we are. Lord, I pray this morning for everyone who's listening, for everyone who's going to pick up this message sometime this week, that you would open their eyes to see, awaken their hearts to remember, to an awareness that they were created before the foundations of the earth, that you had them in mind to be made whole and holy in your love, crowned with glory and honor, to bear your image, to reveal your glory to the world. And to the extent that there is distance between where we are and what we were created for, God, I pray for a coming to our senses that prepares our hearts for the next step in our lives, for the next chapter in our story. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.